If you have distractions when you're learning to draw, it's going to negatively impact your study sessions. But what about background noises like music? You may have heard that classical music helps you study, but is that true, or is that something we actually have just heard through the grapevine because classical music can just be soothing? So you don't have to search through the whole video. I can tell you that yes, music does help you learn, but there's a sweet spot with music to help you learn in terms of genre, volume, and even the right study technique that's going to help you learn the most effectively while listening or drawing to music. Today we're going to do a deeper dive into music and how you can use it to get better at drawing. Is silence or music better for a background noise when you're trying to learn? The science isn't totally clear on this. Drawing can be a very lonely experience, right? So as artists, we tend to like to put something in the background, either music or a TV show or even a movie. It helps fill that silence. You feel less lonely, or sharing it with these TV characters or this music that sort of inspires you to keep drawing. It's just a more comforting experience as you're learning to draw. The question is, even though it is comforting, is that background noise helping you learn, or is it really just serving as a distraction? There are studies that suggest that your personality has an influence. Extroverts tend to enjoy background music, whereas introverts tend to feel annoyed or pressured by it. I've always considered myself more of an introvert, so I don't know how much true that is. Of course, that's my own experience, but people generally aren't in one bucket or the other, extrovert or introvert. They share traits from both sides. So it would be pretty hard to tell right off the bat, you're an extrovert and you should use background music. So we need to go a little bit deeper than that. There are also studies that suggest that depending on what we're doing, background noise or silence helps us more. If you're learning, background music might help you more, but if you're thinking creatively, the silence might actually be more of a benefit to you. My art teacher used to tell us that contrast was such a strong proponent in any piece of art that you do. Everything is contrast. If you want something to look lighter, you need to make things next to it darker. So if you want silence to really have an effect, you listen to something loud or even obnoxious, and that silence is much more pronounced. You feel even more relaxed because you just listened to something that was the total opposite of it. The one thing that we can say with certainty is that silence is beneficial for you, but maybe you don't need to use it in a studying session. So meditation, which I will probably talk about again, is a really good way to get that silence into your life, and you actually grow new brain cells. We're going to come back to how you can use silence to actually study, but first I want to talk about background music so we can compare the two at the end. To understand why drawing to music is beneficial to learning, you have to know three things: how your brain stores a memory, retrieval practice, and your mood. You might think of your brain like a computer, and our memories are files that are easily accessed, like clicking on a folder on your computer. But that's not necessarily how our memories are stored. It's more of a network. Rather than clicking on a file and seeing a nice organized memory, your brain embeds a memory in a network of connections. That network of connections is all the things that are happening, the temperature that you felt, any background noises, any background smells, all of that stuff. Even if you're not consciously aware of it, your brain is making all those connections, and that's how you're going to be able to call upon that memory later. You can start to see how music can be one of those connections in your network to help you remember information better. And that's how it's going to help you learn. But we need one thing in order to let that happen. I've only talked about this briefly so far in another video, and I will be sure to make a longer video about this. But recall is the most efficient study technique, and music is something that makes recall even more efficient. Recall or retrieval practice is almost exactly like it sounds. You recall information or retrieve it from your memory. The best artists that you see out there use recall and retrieval practice without realizing it. Most artists that you see will do lots of studies. I know I was guilty of this, and I'm trying to change my pattern of learning, but you really should be drawing from memory at least half the time, if not more. If all you do is study from reference, you're not going to be able to retrieve that information when you need it. You need to recall that information so you can retrieve it and use it the way that you want. Music is just another way that we do that and make recall that much more of a powerful technique. Music acts as another connection into your network so that that memory is even stronger. In studies, they showed that if you use the same music from when you studied to when you recall, you had that much better of a chance to recall the information because of that stored network of connections. That music piece was playing in the background when you studied, so when you're trying to recall it, if you play that same background piece, it's going to pull from that network because you're listening to that music. So it's going to be easier for you to remember that information. The last part of this is your mood, which it's a pretty obvious one. Listening to music improves your mood. It's been scientifically proven, and I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. But if you listen to music, you're going to improve your mood, which means you're going to feel better about the studying that you're doing. All these things combined will make drawing to music an efficient way of getting better at drawing. Let's run through the things that you'll need to use music effectively in order to get better at drawing. There is a sweet spot to using music for learning. You have to worry about the volume, the type of music that you have, if it has lyrics or not. All of these things become a factor. I hope you don't hear a helicopter. Anyways, number one, make sure that your volume level is not too high. If your volume is too high, it's going to be distracting and you're not going to learn as well as you would if the volume were to be at a low or moderate level. Number two is the type of rhythm and beat that your music has. If your music is too fast-paced or chaotic, even if it doesn't have any lyrics, it's going to be distracting. You might start to feel pressure. There are times where that becomes okay. Sometimes I like to listen to epic movie trailer music, and it helps me creatively come up with ideas. And I like kind of feeling heroic as I'm drawing. So it depends on how much that influences you, but if you find that the rhythm is distracting, change the type of music that you're listening to. Classical is usually a good choice just because of how soft it is. You can use ambient music like nature or rain. Lots of nature sounds are usually very positive and relaxing. Number three, no lyrics. Lyrics are going to be distracting. It's the same as trying to watch a TV show or a movie. You're going to start picking up those words. Even if you can tune it out entirely, your brain is still going to be picking that up in the background and working with it, essentially. Your brain picks up on things that you don't realize, that you're not consciously aware of. So your brain is also going to work on things that you're not consciously aware of in the background, which is trying to figure out the lyrics to the music. So try to choose music with no lyrics. Number four is to use the recall technique. The science is very clear on recall. It is the most efficient study technique. Using background music with the recall or retrieval practice study technique will just help boost its benefits even more. Number five is to use silence when you can. We've seen in studies that background music is not always as beneficial as we think it is, and more to the point is that silence actually has a benefit to your brain and making new brain cells and just getting smarter and learning better. If you're learning, the recall and background music is probably better for you. But if you're trying to do creative tasks, silence might be an interesting option to try out to see how well you're doing. I would suggest using silence for some of the more difficult parts of drawing, like when you come up with the concept, and use background music for things that you know how to do really well. If you have trouble studying in silence, just put on some music, but make it a shorter playlist so that it runs out. I do this on accident all the time and end up drawing in silence for an hour before I realize that the music isn't even on anymore. These 5 things together will be the sweet spot for you learning by drawing to music. I hope this information about drawing to music will help you get better at drawing. In the coming weeks, I'll be putting together a few playlists in order for you to draw better, and they'll be named so that you know what you can use it for, so that when you come back and use recall, you know which one you were listening to before. You can also check your YouTube history, but this way you'll know for sure in case something goes wrong. As I start to teach more about specific subjects, like I'm going to start going into proportion and figure drawing, I'll make specific playlists based on each section of anatomy or whatever we're learning so that you can learn along and use recall appropriately with the right background music. You guys can let me know if there's specific music you want to listen to or a playlist you want me to create that will help you learn better. If you want to read more about all the studies involved with drawing to music or drawing to silence, there will be a written version on my blog, and that will have all the appropriate links you can check out to read more deeply into the studies. I think next week I'll do a deep dive into recall so that you can use that technique properly and actually start drawing to music while using recall. Until then, I will see you guys next week, and thanks for watching. Bye.